But we begin in the Middle East. We just learned, per Pakistani officials, that an Iranian delegation is set to arrive in Islamabad tonight for peace talks. This comes as President Trump says a ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon has been extended for 3 weeks. But both sides are pushing for clarity over fighting with the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. Iran wants Israel to stop its campaign against the group, but President Trump told reporters Iran needs to stop funding Hezbollah in order to make any deal with the U.S. And moments ago, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth gave an update on where the U.S. stands in the war. Here's a portion of what he said.
A blockade as long as it takes, whatever President Trump decides. Because the bottom line remains the bottom line. Iran will never get a nuclear bomb. The choice is theirs, but with this blockade, the clock is not on their side.
All right, let's bring in CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi. Olivia, thank you so much for joining us. I know you were watching that press conference like we all were. What are the highlights?
Yeah, Adriana, it's good to see you, and Errol, good to see you again as well. We also learned that there is another aircraft carrier that is headed to the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman to help enforce this blockade. That would be 2 aircraft carriers now that will be in the region to help enforce it. And as we know, there are now 3 aircraft carrier strike groups that have headed to the region. That kind of speaks to where this conflict is right now, that the U.S. military is not backing down, in fact, adding more forces to the region as there is this ceasefire that is ongoing. Secretary Hegseth also said about the future of the war that President Trump says we have all the time in the world and they're not anxious for a deal. Also notable because we are squarely within the 8th week of this war. President Trump previously promised that it would be between 4 to 6 weeks, but now we're in week 8. And given the fact that they are saying they're not anxious for a deal, they're kind of setting the parameters that perhaps this conflict could go on for even longer. As far as the blockade, Secretary Hegseth also said that it is growing and it is going global, meaning that the U.S. military is starting to focus on and interdict ships that are in the Indian and Pacific Ocean that they believe are carrying sanctioned Iranian oil. They say they are 2 ships that they already interdicted in those regions, and they reserve the right to interdict more. As far as the mines that are inside of the Strait of Hormuz, in the briefing today, Hegseth said that they are focused on that. They are telling the Iranians not to lay more mines, and if they do, they consider that a violation of the ceasefire that is in place right now.
And Olivia, one thing that jumped out to me was that Hegseth did not do a tally of bombs dropped or targets hit. He seemed slightly more reserved in how he was laying out the current state of affairs. And the fact of the matter is, Americans are all feeling this energy price jump because of the fuel squeeze that the Strait of Hormuz blockade is putting on everything. Tell us about how that relates to news just out of the White House today as it relates to the Jones Act and a waiver that helps the U.S.
Yeah, well, we just found out from the White House that they are extending the waiver that they put on the Jones Act. Originally, they had a 60-day waiver on the Jones Act. So what is this? The Jones Act, basically, it's a 1920s law that says any goods coming to U.S. ports have to be on U.S. flagships. So it really, it's stringent on who can come into U.S. ports. They waive that in an effort to try to get more goods, oil and gas, other materials that perhaps are not able to go to ports in the region to redirect them to the U.S. It was waived for 60 days, but now it's been waived for 90 days. So to the point on the timeline and what they're expecting and how long this could take, that kind of gives you an indication if they're willing to extend it for another 90 days. So notable there, a White House spokesperson also just in a post on X said that any of the new data compiled since the initial waiver was issued revealed that more supply was able to reach U.S. ports faster by doing this action. And that's why the president is doing it, because they're trying to mitigate any of the short-term disruptions in energy markets, especially as we've been seeing the price of oil really fluctuating over the last several months.
All right, Olivia Rinaldi, thank you so much.
Thanks, Olivia. CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio joins us now from London with more on all of this. Ramy, good morning. So it appears the U.S. is getting ready in some ways for the long haul here. Hegseth wouldn't specify how long it would take to even, extinguish the mines that are apparently in the Strait of Hormuz. And we hear these discussions about possible additional rounds of peace talks between the U.S. and Iran. What is the latest on that front?
Absolutely, Errol. Good to see you. CBS News has, in fact, learned in the past hour or so that Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is expected to arrive in Islamabad, Pakistan, tonight. This coming from Pakistani government sources, who also say that he'll be joined by what's being described as a small delegation. And we've also learned that there is already an American presence in Islamabad. This is a U.S. logistics and security team in the capital, and the goal, it's being described, is to facilitate that negotiation process. And as you just said, this news came as Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth at that briefing in the past hour said that Iran had a good chance to make a deal with the United States. So it does appear that there is movement toward talks at this moment in time. And, after the earlier hope a couple days ago that they would restart on Tuesday, but we know that Vice President Vance did not even take off from Washington. Notably, though, I want to note that it appears to be, at least to me, some kind of capitulation by Tehran, because officials had up until recently said that talks will not resume until that U.S. blockade is lifted. Again, we just heard from Hegseth that the U.S. blockade is in effect and, in his own words, ironclad. So we'll see again if Araghchi does get to Islamabad, according to government sources in Pakistan, by this evening.
And Ramy, so does it look like we're going to have the same players here having these discussions? J.D. Vance presumably going to be the one representing the U.S. And then to talk about the ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel for a moment, tell us the latest there and what we're hearing from Hezbollah.
Sure. On your first question, there are no reports just yet whether Vice President Vance will, in fact, head to Islamabad. Right now, we only know that it is a logistics and security team, but potentially, he was the man. He has been the man trying to get this over the line. We know that in the past, he has been a little bit more dovish on the war in Iran with the United States and Israel. So we'll see if he actually does make an appearance there. To your second question, though, about Lebanon and Israel, the ceasefire that was extended yesterday by President Trump in Washington when he was hosting the ambassadors of Lebanon and Israel, extended for 3 weeks. But as we're seeing this morning, that ceasefire appears to apply to the government, the official government of Lebanon, but not to the militant group of Hezbollah. Today, Israel's military striking buildings in 2 towns in southern Lebanon. Again, that is the stronghold of Hezbollah. We are expecting more, Israel's military said in just the past couple hours or so, to evacuate another town in southern Lebanon. And then we are hearing from a lawmaker in the government in Lebanon. Hezbollah is represented to some degree in the government. He said that the ceasefire is meaningless because of these strikes that continue. In terms of where that puts the situation, more hits on southern Lebanon, potentially again Hezbollah firing into northern Israel as it has done in retaliation. But the ceasefire here appears to be some kind of schism between, again, the government and Hezbollah.
Yeah, so many pieces to this ongoing conflict. Ramy, we appreciate you spelling it all out for us. Thanks.